Welcome to Manny's TV Talk, where we will talk about all of our favorite reality TV shows and news surrounding them. Grab a snack, a drink, and get comfortable because this starts now.
Pathetic and absurd for these men, these black men, to continue to try to belittle and attack black women.
Hello everybody and welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about the new episode of Love and Marriage Huntsville, Season 6, Episode 17. So we open up with Melody going over to Kiki's house. Mel carries the bone that Tiffany brought up the police looking for Kiki and that she's worried about the brand. And Kiki says she thought she was cool with Tiffany, but she says when this is done and she is vindicated, everybody will bow down to her. Oh boy, that's what Maurice said about Trump. That's what I remembered. So Kiki tells Mel that she cannot confirm nor deny if she was the woman in the video. And then she thanks Mel for calling her when it all happened. She starts to say that Tisha was actually the last one to call her and that she hasn't really been speaking to Tisha lately. So you can already see this tension sort of brewing. But I do appreciate that Mel wasn't talking bad about Tisha in that moment, because she could have, since Kiki was already doing so, she could have added fuel to the fire. But she was actually saying some positive things. So we'll see what happens with that. Speaking of Latisha, the next scene is Tisha and Marsau going over to the house that they're renovating. And she brings up, what is the budget for the furniture? And he is not feeling that question. He thinks that Tisha is going to spend too much money on that. So he says, let's get some furniture from China. So then Tisha says, you know how we can have a good budget if you stop spending so much money on your car. So that turns into an argument about who spends more money. They're both defending themselves. I don't know. I can't take any of them seriously, to be honest. And I don't know why, but part of me thinks this is a made-up argument. Going on about lying, the house, the spending. Turns out Tisha wants a new car, so that was that scene. Moving on is Stormi and Tiffany hanging out. They're at this nice location, some sort of coffee shop or brunch place, but it's a beautiful place. And that's where Tiffany's going to be hosting the baby reveal party that she's doing. So after looking at some colors and where to put the balloons, they sit and talk about what's going on. They talk a little ish about Tisha. They both clearly don't like her too much right now. Stormi is also talking about Marsau and she calls him the B word. But Tiffany says that, don't worry, no men are going to be at this event. But Stormi is very surprised when Tiffany tells her that she invited Keke. And to be honest, so was I. I was like, Tiffany invited Keke to the baby reveal? After all the fights that they've had? Well, Tiffany says, no, everything is okay. As long as she doesn't try to steal no locks or centerpieces. Now, that was shady. I did laugh, but that was very shady. So they go ahead and discuss the Crime Stoppers video from Keke. They're so surprised not only that Keke would steal, but that she would use her child in the process. So Tiffany doesn't know if she wants to be Keke's friend, but after what Mel and her talked about, she's willing to give Keke a chance. So that's what she's decided to do, and she thinks it's time to move forward. But personally, Tiffany is feeling a little overwhelmed with the baby, the older kids, her job, being a wife. That's a lot, Big Lou hasn't been around too much. He's been coaching at the state, working. So Tiffany is shady and messy, but I like this conversation that they ended up having because it was very real. And I appreciated Stormi asking those questions and being supportive of how are you? How are you really? How have you been feeling and stuff like that? It was a very beautiful scene. Okay, moving along, this was a very interesting scene. So it was a double date with the Scotts and the Fletchers. I guess the Fletchers, Miss Nell and Chris, are going to be part of the cast in a greater capacity this season because they've even given them confessionals and everything. So they catching up, having some laughs, but then Nell asks, how was the expo? And Tisha says, it was great. And Nell says, oh, so y'all didn't care to invite us? Boom, right out the gate. Marsau says, y'all didn't get an invite? And they said no. And then Marsau says, well, what do y'all do? And they say, we do real estate. We're real estate agents. And he says, oh, I thought Chris was just a rich man and Nell was the pretty wife. So the Fletchers feel very disrespected because they've been business people for a long time. Nell also owns a daycare. But Marsau does apologize for not inviting them and says that he thought they were friends with other friends who were not getting along, so they didn't want no mess to happen. And the translation of that is they're friends with Melody, so they didn't want mess with them, which I sort of understand to a certain extent. Maybe it's not necessarily that they didn't want to invite them because they are Mel's friend, but maybe it's because there is a lot of tension. They just didn't want to muddy the waters. So if it's like that, I do understand it. But Nell says, we're not in middle school, high school, or college. We're grown. Well, Miss Nell, maybe you and your husband are grown, but these fools are not. So, listen. They continue to talk about the expo, and Nell says, I heard that y'all didn't pay anyone to speak. The Scots get very defensive and say, what we did is that we didn't charge them to speak. As if they were doing the speakers a favor. It's ridiculous. Marsau was going on in circles and talking about his business, his excuses. He said if anyone should be paid, it should have been Maurice and Stormi because they've actually had real businesses. And then here comes the shade. He says, I'm not going to pay for someone who sells t-shirts. Oh, clearly shade to Melody, which props to the Fletchers for standing up for her. So then they switch over from that, and Tisha asks if they've had infidelity in their marriage, and they say yes. And Tisha wants to know more, but as they're about to, say more, Marsau steps in and completely shuts it down. He sort of embarrassed his wife, and when he told her to stop, so she wasn't able to get that deep answer. And in the confessional, the Fletchers ask, why did he stop that conversation? And did Tisha ask because she was just curious and wants to get to know them more personally? Or is this a cry for help? I don't know. Okay, so then it is the day for the baby reveal party. Tiffany walks into the building and she finds this. Everything is so behind, balloons in the bag, horrible. At least they were cooking the chicken and waffles, but everything else was a mess. So Stormi gets there, and thankfully she's able to help set up a little bit. Then Kimmi gets there, and she sees the mess and says, do y'all need some help? Because she wasn't early. They were on time, so maybe Tiffany should have gone a little bit earlier. I don't know, but it was not ready. Okay, so then Melody gets there wearing sweatpants. I mean, what the hell was she wearing? I'm sorry, but this is a party. You're going to wear sweat. Oh my gosh. Anyway, something interesting is that Stormi and Mel, zero interaction. There's definitely tension there. So they're just talking, catching up, and Kimmi says she doesn't know if Tisha's going to be coming. But since they're talking about Tisha, they talk about the Black Expo. Tiffany's still mad she wasn't a speaker. Stormi is still hurt about this $100. She tells him that she's still mad at Marsau, and she says it was an S show. She says that she can't believe Stormi. You gotta get over it, sweetheart. Like, y'all have been beating this to death. Kimmi is trying to defend him and say, well, Maurice did tell me that we also did have to pay. Well, it is what it is. Then Nell gets there, and Melody's really happy to see her. Everybody sits down, but Nell and Melody go sit somewhere else, just the two of them for a little bit, because Nell has no time to waste. She says, we had dinner with the Scots. We asked them about the expo, and it seems like they are hesitant to let us in because of my friendship with you. Melody says, oh, well, that sounds like some BS from them. But Nell tells her the shade that Marsau threw at Melody about the t-shirts and that she didn't really have a real successful business. And Melody goes off and she says, if you want to take jabs, then we can take jabs. Why are they talking about my business when they have over $1 million lawsuit and they have t-shirts and mugs in their website that say black in them as well, and says that it's absurd and pathetic for these black men to be attacking black women, and that she has no problem saying it to their face. And that's how the episode ended. And it looks like next week, Melody is still going to be a little bit bothered by those comments, and she's going to confront Marsau, so that's going to be interesting. But as far as this episode, you guys, what were your thoughts and opinions about what happened? What are your thoughts on what Marsau said to the Fletchers about Melody and the businesses and all that? Let me know your thoughts and comments, and please don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll catch y'all next time. Have a great one. Bye.